Aloha kako. Welcome to tonight's Kanakanology show. Tonight, we're so pleased and honored to have Kekailoa Perry with us tonight. Kekailoa has a lifetime of work for Lahui in all kinds of capacities. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're really looking forward to get to know about your journey, how you began on this path that led you to where you are today and where you plan to go from here.
Aloha, thank you.
The floor is yours.
Right in. Okay.
The floor is yours.
Well, I just wanted to thank the both of you, especially you, Kau'i, for inviting me over. This is when I heard leadership, I said, oh yeah, I wouldn't mind listening to some leadership stuff, but then when you said no, it's for me to be here, I got a little bit nervous because I don't necessarily see myself as a quote unquote leader, and I think what we've done in over the last 20 or so years is that we've created this unattainable kind of idea of leadership. You know, one that makes people who are ambitious for it sometimes forget what it is they're doing or why they're doing it. So I think I'm a little bit more closer to the Makai Nana status that you talk about, and for me, I started as some, I guess you could say, some level of privilege, because my parents were working class shipyard and service workers, but they followed what's called the American dream. And I don't fault them for it, because when they were raising their 3 kids, they needed to figure out a way to pay the bills and do all those kinds of things. And so they worked themselves way into what would be considered back in the 1960s and 70s a middle class family. But part of the sacrifice, right, was that they had to forego or give up or deny who they were as Hawaiians. And because the system didn't allow for the full expression of Hawaiianness and live out your careers as service workers, one had to give way to the other if you wanted to be quote unquote successful. And so my parents, while they were very much Hawaiian and practiced different things, had to identify more as Americans. So that's why I say I was somewhat privileged, because they were able to help us, live a more or less healthy, I don't know what you call it, middle class American life. And being the oldest grandchild on both sides of the family, I was a little bit, I don't know if you would say spoiled, but I was loved a lot. And it started with my grandparents. Both my grandmothers were the Hawaiian side, and my grandfathers were Haole and Portuguese. So the grandmothers, when I was born, they fought over who's gonna have me. Not in a bad way, but they kind of was hinting, and and they started to suggest to my parents early on, before I was born, what name I should take. But my dad, being the very astute politician that he was, working at the shipyard at Pearl Harbor, said his name is going to be Junior, and that was it. So for me, I was raised in a very loving family, especially with my grandparents, and they taught me a lot of things. In fact, because my parents were working so hard, I was raised part of my time in Wailupe, now known as Aina Haina, hind land, or area. And part of my time was being raised in Nanakuli, where my mom's side was. So I got I got a taste of 2 very interesting worlds, but it started to make me realize a little bit more about access and gathering issues. It started to make me realize a little bit more about community, because back then, especially in Aina Haina today, Wailupe, the community has changed. You walk through the community now, like I did a few weeks ago, and people kind of stare at you like, hey, who is this guy? Which tells you that the complexion of the community is changing a little bit. You don't see
Right.
too many long hair brothers walking down the street,
Mm.
especially long hair brothers that walk into the stream bed looking for rocks for their emo. Um,
Right.
People, yeah. So people immediately, when that happens, call up the cops and they say, hey, something's going on. Get one guy down in the stream. I don't know what he's doing down there. Because their version of the stream is to, channelize it and make it, so that it doesn't flood,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
have their stream frontage cottage,
Right.
um,
Right.
versus
Mhm.
having it as an accessible space for maintenance of different kind of cultural practices. But so on the other side, I spent a lot of time on the Nanakuli side, learning a whole lot of things. I won't go into the naughty things right now, but I will say that most of my ocean experiences were there. I learned how to drown Nanakuli Beach Park. That's one of the first things you do.
Oh.
When you're little, one of the first things you do is they throw you out there in the shore break, and then good luck,
Yeah.
right? But they're not going to let you drown. But they teach you to value your life and learn how to work in the currents and those kind of things. So
How big the world is really. And
exactly,
more
exactly,
control. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. And then you start to depend on your family, right? Because
Mhm, mhm.
they're the ones that you have to rely on. And even the ones you don't know who get the boogie board next to you and you're getting hot time, right? Who happen to be the neighbor down the road, and you depend on you start to learn the value of that kind of community. Um I mean, back when I was little, you couldn't even walk into Nanakuli the bathroom at the park and go do kolohe things, because the people who used to take care of the facilities would chase you out, and it would be shameful if my tutu heard, oh, hey, your grandson was over there making trouble in the bedroom.
Mhm,
So
mhm. True.
so you learn a little bit about value, the values, cultural values, and just basic human respect for things. And so I guess I can start there. What politicized me was my neighborhood. I grew up in the middle of Wailupe and Nanakuli. Was a community that was kind of born out of developers called Mililani, right? So I know most
Right.
people are
Mm.
familiar with it now. Yeah. Am I going? How's our timing? I'm not talking
No,
too
no,
much.
Oh,
it's good.
oh,
It's
yeah,
good.
Anna's
my
on mute.
Sorry.
Okay. So my parents bought a new home, and it was, they worked at my dad especially was working shipyard double shifts, so it was close to the shipyard. It kind of in between the two families, so they could go both sides. But in Mililani, we were kind of the second segment where my parents bought, kind of where the high school is now. But
Mhm.
when we were there was no such thing as a high school yet. It was all pineapple fields. And what I learned there was something a little bit more political, a little bit more social, right? And it was a different kind of community. There were a lot of local families, but sprinkled throughout the local families where we were living were a lot of settlers, people from either associated with the military expansion or who had just come to Hawaii within the last so many years. Let's put it this way: we moved there when I was 6. Some of the folks who had moved into the homes in Mililani, I was older. I was in Mililani or Hawaii longer than they were.
oh, yeah.
So which was, I mean, in a community setting, you learn how to grow to know each other, right? Unfortunately, where we were surrounded by settler families who didn't quite like the fact that we were there.
Oh,
um, and when my parents first moved in, the stories I heard was the whole Nanakuli and Wailupe family just all came to Mililani to enjoy their time with us and share the new home and everything. And what happened over time was the people kind of identified us as unwanted, I don't know, locals or or Hawaiians in the community.
Like somehow a threat.
Yep, yep. And I remember distinctly when I was about third or fourth grade, coming home late at night from the weekend at my tutus in Nanakuli, and there was a sign on the fence, that the gate that opens into our pahale, and the sign said, "Your kind is not wanted here."
Oh my God.
Yeah, this is stories you hear, like, more like in the continental US in the 60s kind of thing, right? But this is late 60s, early 70s, actually 1970, early 70s. And my mom is the kind of person, she's one of those with the most loving hearts, even though you rot into her, she gonna find a way to love you.
Right.
And that's just the way she was raised, and that's the way she raised us. And so that's what made it more shocking to me, because as soon as she was the first one to see the sign. She went and walked the whole block, knocked on every door. This must have to be about 10 at night, and made sure everyone answered the door. And she just put the sign in front of their face and said, "Okay, you had something to do with this, tell me now." And it ended up only two of the neighbors, who just happened to be not from Hawaii, and
There was Howleys from America.
Haole people from America. And they said, "You damn right we put that on, because none of us in this neighborhood want you here."
Oh
And
my goodness.
and that's the first time I saw my mom swear, and it's the first time I saw her tell them, "Don't you ever do this again, because you don't want to know what's going to happen afterward." And
Must have been so shocking to see your Miss Aloha loving, sweet mommy to like get all radical, and like,
yeah, I mean,
to be offended to that point.
yeah, and she didn't even want to leave. She stood at the door until the person's husband, the lady's husband, came out and said, "Get the hell out of here." Of course, my dad was standing right there, and he said, "Get your ass back in your house. We have things to say." And my dad is one of those quiet guys who just speaks with his own form of aloha. um, and after that day, things were never quite the same. They were a little bit more tense. But I started to learn at a young age, elementary school, what racism meant. And I started to learn what bigotry meant. And it's not, I mean, my parents did not want that to be my experience, because they had sacrificed up until that point who they were, and did everything they could to buy a new home, and give us clothes on our back, and put us to
Mm-hmm.
school and everything. And so the last thing they wanted for us to do is experience the kind of discrimination they had experienced when they were younger.
Right. They probably felt that they had done everything right to avoid that. And then like, what a betrayal and heartbreaking moment for them. Wow.
Exactly.
Was that your first impact in where we're going to start your journey?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
or
think so.
I should say continue your journey, because I mean, it's now at home, right? It's not somewhere else. It's not anywhere else. It's now home. So what was that for you? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and to see my parents' disappointment, not in the situation, but in the fact that everything that they had done could not protect me from it.
Right.
Level of fear and frustration. So it did get me started. Now, when you're little, you're internalizing, but you're not articulating it, right?
Correct.
And so maybe when we were in school and had trouble, you might yell out, "Hey, you effing this," or "You effing that," or whatever. But and you're responding to things a little differently. Like I responded to things a little differently. And I don't know if it was those experiences that brought those kinds of things out a little bit more expressively when I was growing up, but definitely by the time I get into high school, you start to identify people by race. You start to identify people by geography.
Mhm.
and it becomes a bias, right? Which
Mhm.
and I'll tell you, I'll say it again. My parents didn't want me to have the same bias that they did. They wanted me to grow up in a different world, one that was supposed to be more equitable.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, you know, by the time I'm in high school, most of the, the trouble I got into had a lot to do with my perception of people and my and people's perception of me as a Hawaiian, as somebody who's I went to a private school, so I had my parents mortgaged their house twice for that. Poor thing at it. If they only knew how terrible. No, okay, I won't say that. But they, I there were people who were better off, right? So who had more income. Their families obviously had more income. They would ride in with limousines to get dropped off to school. So with that, there was an economic difference that was happening.
Mhm.
There was racial issues, and those kind of things began to take form in some negative relationships, um, and and I didn't realize till much later after high school how much those experiences in elementary school between my neighbors started to influence other ways that I see the world, you know, ways that my parents was hoping would never be a part of my life. But
Mhm.
then as I started to realize that and I sit back and talk with my parents as I'm an adult, I realized that they were experiencing it all the time.
Right.
And they were trying to shelter me from it, but in their attempt to shelter me, made it more revealing in some ways, right? You start to
Mhm.
go, well, how come you're not talking, or how come you're doing this? And
Even
so
maybe even more resentful, maybe in a sense.
yeah, I really think so. I think because now you start realizing the sacrifice. As I'm a young adult, I look back and I realize how much sacrifice my parents did, not just economically, not just culturally, but socially, sacrificing being better people only to be treated like shit. Right? Sorry, can we
Mhm.
swear on this? Um,
Hikino.
you know, and and that started to make me, as I got older, e- angry. You know,
Right.
it made me real angry because I felt like they went through a lot of stuff when they didn't have to, when
Mhm.
they should not have had to.
Right.
Um, but my politics really didn't start um, materializing till I got into UH. Well, first I went UH Hilo. I learned a lot about agriculture in Hilo. Um, but I have Ohana in Hilo, and I know Kau'i from kind of those initial experiences. Back in the early 80s, mid 80s,
Mhm.
it's probably good we didn't know each other too well, Kau'i, because I was so naughty. Um, but one thing that Hilo did, it didn't teach me so much the politics yet. What Hilo taught me was how to root myself. So I had my experiences with my Ohana, but being away from home, but not quite away from Hawaii, right?
Mhm.
Put me smack dab in the middle of the first Hawaiian leadership program that Antipua Kanahele and Uncle Ed Kanahele had
Mhm.
established. Now, I wasn't in the program. I was living in Hale Kaonoi with all of the brothers who were in the program.
Right.
And we had fun. We partied, we hung out. And one day they told me, hey, you should come take our Hawaiian language class with Noea Warner. And I went, nah, okay, let's go. And so we did that, and I thought visitor Noel gonna be nice to me. He picked on me the whole day, and but it made me, yeah, for real. He was like Kekailoa. I'm like, oh no. But after that, it really made me feel like I was in it,
Mhm.
and then Auntie Pooh and Uncle Ed said, well, your friend Kikai, tell him come to Waipio with us. We'll let him come with us. So we went. Kia Franda's Hale was down there. Not the
Mhm.
Hale that everybody knows today. It was a little bit different.
Yeah.
In fact, we slept in a big army tent on one of the falalois That was kind of our place. We stayed there for about 2 weeks, and we learned protocol. And for me, Auntie Pooh and Uncle Ed just kind of made me realize that the spiritual, the physical, the cultural experiences were 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 a part of me. Where I used to think that's the Hawaiian stuff, and this is this over here. And I kind of learned here on Oahu to separate it out. You know,
That was for when you was in Nanakuli or whatever.
yeah, exactly.
Well,
And
Oahu has the tendency to do that, have this separatist kind of being, walking around and everything. It's easy for you to separate yourself from who you really are. So I get it, I get it.
Yeah. Although I have to say, it was good growing up on Oahu, because if any of my Oahu Ohana is watching, they're gonna scold me if I say, "Hey."
Oh,
But it's true. It's true. We're the metropolis over here. Today there's about a million, little over a million, just on this island, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so encroachment into all of the traditional and customary spaces is worse.
Right.
So Hawaii Island was for me the reaffirmation of who I am, not just as a Hawaiian but as a Kanaka.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I credit Auntie Pooh and Uncle Ed especially for just giving me the space to realize it. They didn't try and ingrain it into me or anything. They just said, "Okay, here's a space, brother. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, start to take it in, start to make sense of it." And that was important, because by the time I left Hilo, I was better at fishing. My brother Jeff Cho taught me a lot of good things about fishing. Um, and I was better at hunting up Mauna Kea. Although most of the time I was hunting, I would wake up, take a nap under the tree, wake up by a cinder cone and see tracks all around me. So I figured, well, my snoring must have called the animals. So I was always making sure I had a couple of friends, and I would tell them, go on the pu'u next to me, let me fall asleep, guarantee animals gonna show up. So better fishing than hunting, actually. But I also at that time, 1984, 85, 86, that was when Tutu Pele was very active.
Right.
And we spent a lot of time up in Puna just watching, just in the elements, watching, smelling, just feeling. And I didn't know back then, because I was raised one staunch kind of Catholic boy. But I didn't realize back then how much of an influence Akua Pele had on my understanding of spirituality. And I will say I spent some time with Auntie Minika Avaloa, and unfortunately I always ask questions of her. I don't know if she's thinking, oh, this Oahu boy, oh, humbug. But I always for some reason asked her spiritual questions because of the Christian part of her. And one of the things I used to always ask is, okay, so Auntie, how do you make sense of this this, because she was a Manaleo. Sometimes she would olelo, and some of the words she spoke sounded very much like very kahiko kind of phrases relating to the elements and akua. Yet she was a kahu in the church. So I kind of asked, like, okay, how do you make sense of it? And she told me stories about the flow that went down into Kapoho when she was little, and how people watched the flow, and even though there was a strong Christian faith in the family, they saw Pele as Pele, and she didn't have to explain anything to me. She just kind of said that's the way it is. And it really made me come to grips with not being so worried about
Like,
God.
and the lines, that doesn't necessarily have to be a line in the sand.
Exactly.
Whether you are practicing your cultural beliefs or you're practicing this other religious beliefs.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, my two grandmothers were very strong Catholic women. But my dad's mom loved Hawaiian music and hula. So
Mm.
she went to 4 different churches when I was little. I was the oldest grandchild, right? So I had to go with her. And the bribe was the kind Dae used to have that dim sum place that she always used to buy me to.
It works.
Yeah. But she went to 4 different churches, and what I realized as I was growing up is those 4 churches weren't Catholic churches. One of them was a Catholic church, and the communities though that she spent time in were important for her and the spiritual part of it. But it wasn't so much because of the quote unquote structure of the religion, you know.
Mm.
And
Interesting.
my mom's mother stayed in one church, but everywhere we went was pule. Uh, every you driving in a car, you going to the supermarket, you walking on the beach in the sand, you saying rosary or you saying some kind of prayer. And for her, that phrase, right, he mana kapule. For her, it
Mhm.
was a everyday real life experience.
Mhm.
And it wasn't about the structure of the church either. It was more about understanding, your relationship to everything around you.
Mhm.
And so I got those 2 kupuna plus anti-mini, and that confirmed for me so many things, that I was, like you said, yeah, I was trying to, okay, this is this church, this is this religion. Today, I don't know, man. Today, the younger, I shouldn't say younger, but the religious uh, experiences now, people seem to be more willing to draw the line. I don't know why. You know, when you start to get involved in different churches today, especially those huge ones, those huge churches, it seems like it's either or. It's either this God or no God, right? And
Mm.
I don't know, but I have a suspicion that it's affecting our ability as a Kanaka Maoli or OEV. It's affecting our ability to relate to our traditional and customary practices. Because
Mm,
if you draw the line real clear, then how do you maintain the practice when you know
right,
the practice? Yeah, when you know the practice is not based on Judeo-Christian religious beliefs. It
right. When there is another God before you or whatever the commandment is, yeah. Like
yeah,
we realize, yeah, it is. It is something that the Kanaka Maoli have been doing for many, many generations, finding that balance between their
yeah,
Christianity and their culture.
yeah. So all of that, I come from Hilo. I go back to UH Manoa. Transfer over, and something about me didn't want to leave Hawaii Island. I just didn't want to leave it. That's why, Kau'i, when I got to meet you even better when I was working at OHA, I was like, oh, I used to work for Trustee Colette Machado. So I used to tell Colette, let me go Big Island. Let me go Big Island. No, we represent all the islands, Kekai. But I did go back to Oahu and went to UH Manoa, and I think I didn't fail completely, but I was on academic probation. And that was my experience of trying to transition from some place where I started to really grow roots and really see myself as a fuller human being. And when
Mm.
I walked into Manoa, it felt very foreign to me. I didn't know how to relate to my professors. I didn't know how to relate to the other students around me. Today we get about a little over 11% or maybe closer to 13% Hawaiian
Wow.
students at Manoa. Back when I was in school, it was, I think, barely 5%. So you had to
Mhm,
really
mhm.
try hard to find other Kanaka.
And to keep them there, and to keep them there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Oh yeah, just to find your people was like
Let,
such a small
let alone
wow, I
thinking
never
about
thought
what,
about that.
let alone thinking about what study you're going to go into.
Hmm.
What you're going to choose to be the thing that you're going to graduate from college from. You know,
yeah,
so
yeah.
much. Oh,
So
how
I
did you
ended up walking.
survive?
I did survive. I didn't do well in school the first year and a half, or no, first first 2 semesters. Um, but what I did do was I walked down the street on Dole Street by the dorms after a party, and there used to, where Hawaiian Studies is now, Kamakukokalani, the building,
Mhm.
that used to be one gravel parking lot. That was the parking
Right.
for everybody who got to school late and couldn't get the structure. So of course that was me all the time. And I got I I was walking to my car in the gravel lot, and I had not even realized that there was a lo'i, the kapapalo'i o kaniwai, that it was there, because never have, I mean, had big trees blocking the road, your view from the road down to the lo'i at the time. But I just happened to catch the sound of the awai, I think it was. And I went and I went to Niele and walked down and I saw Keone Fairbanks,
Oh,
and
nice.
he was cleaning the awai, and I went, hey, how's it? And what did it for me was all of the experience from YPO with Kia and Antipua guys just all came rushing back into me when I saw the lo'i and the awai at Kaniwai, and I felt immediately at home. And
Wow.
yeah, it was so cool because up until that
Wow.
point, I was ready to just say, chuck it, forget this experience. Um, and then of course, Keone being the being the recruiter that he was, he said, hey, how are you doing? Talk story, while he's in the Alwai working. And then he said, can you grab this plastic? Because he's trying to line it with plastic at the time because I had plenty pukas he was trying to patch in the kuauna. So he told me, can you hold the plastic for me real quick? And the next thing I know, 4 hours later, or however long it was, hours later, um, we're finishing lining the plastic, lining the away with the plastic, and I was hooked. I was pretty hooked. And he told me, so we'll see you tomorrow. And I went, oh yeah, I'm coming tomorrow. And so Kanewai started to get me um, reacquainted with who I was on the island of Oahu. Um,
Wow.
and Keone, so going back to my story about how much haules was making a problem for my life when I was young. Keone is a
Mhm.
haole.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
when I got to know him, he taught me, you know, how my perception sometimes can be really problematic, and that I need to kind of pay attention to all of the community around me, because there are allies and there are there's value in it,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
And that's how Kaniwai basically saved me from dropping out of school, I would say. Um, and then it started to teach me a little bit about politics, but it wasn't until I took Haunani K. Trask's first ever Hawaiian Studies class, and I had Luana Busby in the classroom. I had a bunch of folks who were kind of already in the activist realm,
Right.
and Haunani just laid it in so heavy, it forced me to rethink who I was, because I was still kind of a Hawaiian dash American. I was still kind of kind of believing in the American dream, because if my parents were able to do it, I mean,
Mhm.
then certainly I would be able to improve on it. And Haunani K really kind of asked hard questions and forced me to look inside of myself and look around me, and forced me to kind of ask, what is a Hawaiian?
Right.
Um, and that was another hook for me, because first of all, it frustrated the hell out of me because I
Mhm.
couldn't answer the questions. When she asked about the historical stuff, I couldn't answer it. I thought I knew a little bit of history because I took history in high school and I learned a little bit from the Big Island.
Mhm.
But she started going into the political history. She started asking questions about, why does Hawaiian history start at the arrival of Captain Cook? How come we're not thinking about our own genealogies that go generations prior to him?
Mhm.
What is the value of our understanding of history from the point of view of the Kumulipo? I mean, why does history have to be something based on an American interpretation? And that, so that all that stuff started to really you know, screw with my
Powerful,
mind.
powerful,
Yeah,
powerful. Yeah,
yeah,
powerful.
it was.
And
It
I
was.
could see how it could be just fully unsettling too, because you think you have this definition of what is good and what is appropriate and who you are, and then you just realize like, oh, yeah, and
And
and realizing that it's a
Dynamic.
system, the systemic components of why things are the way they are.
yeah, and then you start looking around you and going, how come we only get 2 Hawaiian studies classes?
Was
How
that
come?
what happened? I mean, at that time, how
Yeah.
many
Yeah, I
classes
think.
did they have at that time? By the way.
Oh, I think. Well, Haunani and Lilikala started writing a ton of them. But in the beginning, there wasn't even a Hawaiian Studies 107. They were just general. It just how Nani got into her decolonization classes. Lili Kala started introducing genealogy classes
Mm.
and Hawaiian myths classes, and that's how it started. Was 1987 when they officially got the center created.
Right.
And I
So
remember they
when
were trying to take Haunani out at one time. Remember they were trying to get her out of off the. I mean, stuff like that. Come on, it's
yeah,
yeah, that was
yeah,
happening that time too. But oh my gosh, how
yeah.
thrilling! But I just like chicken skinning right now for real that you had that opportunity to have her as a kumu, like
Oh yeah,
firsthand.
she is no fool around.
Oh yeah.
Her, I took a lot of classes from a lot of good professors at UH, but her and Lili Kalau were the ones who just, took a uku comb to my work. You know, it was like, well, what do you mean this is? How can you make these generalized statements? What's your evidence? Find the information. Don't just make these generals. Don't say, the Howleys did this. Tell us how are you going to prove that? Otherwise, that's, you can't make those kind of statements. And I used to look at them like, wait a minute, you guys make those
Mm-hmm,
statements.
mm-hmm,
And how Nani would say is because I did my research. Go do your damn research. Um,
mm-hmm.
and they forced me to be a better student, I think, um, and to be more discerning, more aware. And then the students in the class, right? Those are the ones who are going, hey, brother, we're gonna go hold signs on the DHHL issue, or we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, and so okay, I'll go try. And that's when I started to realize, oh, there's a whole community here of quote unquote activists who are raising social awareness on issues, and that's where I started to get my feet wet. I started to meet people. I started to meet some real mellow people, and you start to meet a little bit more of the
Exciting
aggressive,
ones.
yeah, exciting ones. And for some reason, I don't know why, I just really gravitated to the very exciting ones.
Me too. Me too.
um, and so Hawaiian studies and the lo'i combined, and then with all my experiences in Hilo and my own ohana, started to it created the person that I think I am now. And really getting more involved in the community stuff. At the time, I wasn't too familiar with the issues, but I was doing it because I felt like it felt right. It just felt right. But then when you get involved, then people expect more out of you, right? Okay, you better learn you better know why you're here.
Mm-hmm.
You better know what you're doing. Otherwise, what are you doing? You don't want to
Like,
be an
there's work.
armchair
There's
activist.
work.
Yeah.
There's work to be done as well. Yeah, there's that other component, like help us kind thing.
And especially when you come in out of the university, or you're a student in the university, a lot of times the community goes, oh, okay, we get another one. Good, we get another Hawaiian who's being educated. We got Kuleana for you, and it was scary, to be honest with you, because I didn't really know how to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and the beauty about the Hawaiian community is they're very patient when it comes to that. They're gonna say,
Mm-hmm.
that's okay, that's all right, come,
Mm-hmm.
we show you.
Mm-hmm.
We can learn you how.
Yeah, exactly. And and that community, experience, that was another hook for me. It made me want to be more connected. It made me want to learn more. It made me want to commit to something, because up until that point, I don't think I was too committed to anything. I was just kind of, um, dash in, dash out, you know. And so this is one of those things where you felt like you had to be, because the community is in dire need of of people to fight the fight, you
Right.
know. But they are also really good at teaching you um, that you're not all that, you know. At least the mentors came across, they were really quick to make sure that I didn't think I was, just because I went to the university and I read something, doesn't mean I freaking know everything,
Mm-hmm.
and that was important too. And I think a lot of the young folks now, they learning that later. They sometimes you got to get the kind of, get the slap on the wrist a little sooner, so you can have a little bit more humble in your ways, and and you can be grow the thick skin, so you're able to deal with a lot of the stress and a lot of the pain and suffering that comes along with activism, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not all happy. When you're fighting against the colonial or U.S. apparatus, right, and the occupier government, that is considered one of the biggest governments in the whole world, um, there's gonna be a lot of losses and struggles, along the way.
In spite of
So
your best efforts, in spite of justice being on your side, sometimes you just, the disappointment sometimes, when the corruption and the discrimination is just rubbed so blatantly in your face. You're right, you do need to have that like resiliency, and it's expected of you on top of the resiliency that it took to even get to the point to be an activist. Yeah.
yeah, and what I didn't learn early on was that sometimes you gotta take some time off, give yourself a little bit of a break, and not like go take vacation, but give yourself a break emotionally,
Mm.
and give yourself a break physically, um, because if you don't, then there's a lot of burnout. There's a lot of there's suffering. Although I mean, I wasn't in the front lines with like a lot of other folks, so I cannot claim to have experienced as much suffering. But I will say that the being involved in different struggles does test your will at times, especially like you said, that when it's so clear, you got the facts on your side, you got even the colonizer's law is on your side, and the people are on your side, but the decisions are still being made against you, and
Yes.
you start to wonder, like, what the hell am I fighting for? What's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
You get over it because you know that you can't give up,
Right.
but it'll test your will,
It definitely feels like futility at some points. I know I've been through that. And I think anybody who's been in the movement reaches that point, but it's so true. So true.
and
It's
then
one of the growing pains you will
yeah,
encounter. Yeah. Like,
yeah, and then how do you blame brothers and sisters who decide, what, forget it, I'm gonna either bail, or I'm not gonna hold signs anymore, I'm gonna be more confrontational.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't really critique that in a negative way, because what else? I mean, what people just will stop, uh, are not going to be so patient,
Mm-hmm.
right.
you know?
And that's why the bringing it back to that dialogue, yeah. In the I think when the Honokahua burials, it was really important for Uncle Ed and Auntie Pua guys, because it was the spiritual aspect, to start laying down some sort of, it wasn't there before, in a sense where it was critical for us to all participate, but we started to do that 1 hour on the hour vigils, because it centers the whole group. It centers the whole group. It reminds people every hour on the hour. It allows the group to have that time to, to have that moment of peace within yourself, knowing that it isn't about them. It's about how we are, what are our goals, what are everything. So we're stopping that basing our whole strategic thing that we're doing based on what they think that we should be doing, or based on how the world is seeing us. It doesn't matter. I mean, that to me is where we started the real, from Aloha Aina, the next thing that really centered us was now putting those things into practices. And so that's the kind of stuff that you were talking about when you went to Waipio, that grounding back to the Aina, finding that Aina back where you can, in that, Kaniwai, I mean, your Akua and reach and grab you and said, this is where you need to be at this moment in your time, And so I think when I'm looking at the progressiveness of the activism, as you put it, I like the fact that more communities are going to that level of spiritual consciousness. There's, like stopping and saying, you know what, we're here, we're gonna do these practices and gather and give everybody that moment, because you're right, it's burnout. And unless you take it on as a kuleana, right? You take it on the kuleana, all the burden and kuleana thing happened, placed on top of you. So how do you give that part that kind of that respite? So it takes everybody, and I think we're okay. I really think that we're okay in that way. If so long as we keep on finding that moments where it doesn't matter what everybody else does, how they think. It matters what we do, how we center our core, how we reach our akua. If we build an ahu right on the road, doesn't matter. And we got to get off of this thing about that. Just saying that much, because I mean, I've seen us grow, Kekai, for, since Kalapana time, and that's why I kind of wanted you on the show, because I want to really reach back to some of the leaders, and not just the leaders, but people that went to the suffrage, I should say, in a sense, and built from their journey, what they did with it, and if it was the political arena that you decided to, help in that area, and helping communities and everything, that's what we're going to do. But it's just touching bases with everybody and saying, all these things we learn, there's value to it, and if we can keep on giving the next generation, we're okay. I think we're okay.
Yeah, and it's not just the politics, because I think it's not a coincidence, with the Mauna and other movements that kind of carried on after it. It's not a coincidence that the spiritual part played a significant role.
Mm-hmm.
It's really not a coincidence. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if all I did was politics and spouted legal issues and stuff like that, I would probably be a good political legal issue spouter, right? but it's the stuff that Antipua and Kumu Lake before them, when I was going to St. Louis school, it's that kind of grounding and my kupuna in their spiritual understanding of the world that makes it a whole thing, right? And in fact, I think the spiritual side, or the practitioner side, right, the idea of maintaining your cultural connection, is probably the most political thing we can do. Because writing letters to the legislature ain't gonna do much. But if I write a letter to the legislator and say, I'm gonna access Wailupe Stream, that will probably get me a thank you, Mr. Perry, for your concern. But if after I write it, I go down in Wailupe Stream and I start maintaining access to Pule, collect stones for my imu, now that cultural expression becomes the most important political thing I can do.
Correct.
For that space.
Correct.
It's walking the walk, right? Not just that you have the right to do so, but assuming that right and demanding it by grabbing a hold of it in a tangible way.
Yeah, I heard
Yeah.
Kanehele talk one time, and he did the same thing by just go holo holo along Kiokaha, along the that just go holo holo, just 4 miles around that, that whole area, whatever. And just doing that is a good thing, because who else is going to tell about how much fish going to be there, how many, we're taking care of it, right? That's how we do it. And that's one of the
Right.
things that he had to talk about at I forget, one of these hearings or something. It was like actually saying that this is what he does, and it's valid. And it's a
Yeah.
political statement in a sense, because I'm here at the hearing talking, but what I'm trying to say is that it was very, very grounding for me to look at that as a wow, yeah, for real. If we don't still start taking our children to go camping down the beaches, if we don't teach them how to holo holo or go down to Nanakuli Beach and tumble in the waves, then what are we talking about? Everybody else using them for whatever the pleasure they like, but they not can tell what kind of fish you cannot, what kind of fish is over there, where the mano holes are, that kind of stuff. And that's the stuff we can work on. That's the kind of stuff
I,
we
I,
can work
I,
on.
yeah, I agree. I think that's so on point. I mean, the other thing I try to talk, with my nephew and nieces, my son and
Mhm.
students that I have now, come full circle right now. I'm teaching at UH Manoa. Who would have
Oh,
thought?
my kai.
But
Nice.
what I like to teach them is that soon as you start asserting now traditional customary access and rights, that doesn't mean I can jump on a plane on Oahu from Oahu, fly over to Keaukaha and start accessing the fishing grounds over there. Because if
Mhm.
I'm claiming access and gathering rights, then I have to also acknowledge the protocols that are involved with respect to
Correct.
those places.
Totally.
And that's something I think sometimes we forget. We figure, yeah, we know Hawaiian, bro. And we're not realizing that there's a whole level of understanding and aloha that we're supposed to have
Mhm.
for the practices and the practitioners in the different areas. So I feel kind of confident going to Wailupe and some places out in Nanakuli and Waianae, but I would not be so presumptuous to think I can go every place in those areas or on the island of Oahu, in fact, and say,
Mhm.
I get rights, right? Because
Mhm.
the way things are going now, there are people in the different communities who will check me really quick.
I mean, can I just ask a question, because like over here, that's was one of my concerns about our community, our Hawaiian communities on the island. I really wanted to try to find out from all communities how how many kids use the beach, how many children in our communities. I mean, and I don't want to call it a program, it's like, uncle, take them down to the beach and teach them about the place names of the place. When I moved to Kalapana, Uncle Herbert Kaukai used to take us, all the new people that, moved in, on a tour of Kalapana, of the shoreline, all the way down to the canoe landing and all the way across, down to the national park and everything, tell us the whole history. And I remembered that like to today. And I was so thankful because, I mean, I grew up in Nanakuli. I mean, I know a lot of the places over there, but I don't know the place names. I don't know, I know where to swim, where not to swim. And I remember gathering on that, on those places and stuff like that. But most of all, it was your school is Nane Kopono, and you go school and you go home, and that was the way that was our way. And so when you think about it, I really am curious to find out how many of our families are, continuously, not just going on weekends, but just knowing where you live, all the kids in your community, all the children in your community, so they get that anchor. So just saying, I just wanted to just put that out there, but wow, brought up some memories.
Well,
Yeah.
hey, just that place down where we used to go. Should I tell where we used to go fishing? Out in they still call it Hule Ava, right?
Oh
But the
yeah,
name
yeah,
of
yeah,
the
yeah.
the stream, the name of the stream that goes out in Nanakuli just before Maili is called Ulehava.
Yeah.
And there's a whole story behind it. But you know, when you're growing up, you don't even, when they do tell you what sounds like a Hawaiian place name, it's not the right name. And I think that that's part of the I don't know, I know we're an occupied state, but I think it's a colonial like process that happens in our communities, where it's the biggest native Hawaiian community in the whole archipelago down Waianae Coast. And yet it's a struggle to just be able to understand what those places are and how important they are in our history, you know. So you make a real good point. If that's the biggest population of Native Hawaiians, and generation after generation, only a handful are able to be taught that stuff. The rest of us, what are we being taught? You know, we're being taught to be kind of what they call the other, right? We're being taught to accept our erasure.
Common Core standards.
Well, that's why I have a lot of respect for the DeSotos, you know, Buffalo guys and stuff that kept that whole coastline intact, you know, Auntie Frenchie them. I mean, the Kupuna, I mean, strong, I mean, big support group down there. They have a Kupuna council down there that, you know, generational kind. And I think that to some degree, I hope that we can see a lot more of that happening, where we have Kupuna councils. I mean, we're getting to be Kupuna ready, you know, and yeah, and this is where we can, you know, start putting our time in our communities, you know, to you know, have that site, like I said, making sure the kids go to Waimanalo Beach, you know, use them. Otherwise, you're going to lose them, you know. Go Nanakuli, you know, it's a county park. No, it's not. And this is just off the subject, but still on the subject. The name of that Nanakuli Park is Kalaniana Ole Park.
Right.
And several years ago, they said, oh, we're going to turn it back from Nanakuli Park to Kalaniana Ole Park. And I was like, it's always been Kalaniana Ole Park. You know, that kind of, like you say, the huleaba, you know, to me, if it doesn't, if you, like Auntie Lamho, Auntie, Mrs. Lamho used to say, mo popo. You know, if mo popo. We get the mo'olelo later on, but you know, still yet, it's just, there's so many things that we can, you know, kuka about, but you know, I just so thankful that we have people like yourself that can give us your journey, because it's about memories. It's like those memories that jarred you when you were little, and your mom, you know, and then pretty soon we start doing all of these things. The one memory I have that I'm coming into myself about is when, you know, somebody has sent me a video, and it was about Hanani, and what does she say? And it's the most truest statement, but yet it's the hardest for some people to see. And that is, we are not Americans. We are not Americans. There was nothing that made us American. We were still Kanaka. And, you know, it just amazed me when somebody sent me that stuff, and I just was listening to it, and it's true. It's so true. It has nothing to do with anything else for me, except that I had to come to terms with myself in that, because I've been told all my life, you know, we've assimilated, and we haven't. I'm sorry. I mean, all my life, I'm like fighting this whole thing, and I'm like, I finally just said, okay, no, I'm not, you know, so. But when it comes to it, you know, everybody will find their own time to come into terms with whatever they have to come into terms with all of the experiences. A lot of our guest speakers that came on before, you know, they talked about their journey and what started them. And basically, it's, if we stick to those stories and there's nothing that comes to fruition of it, or at least in the movement of being at least fruitful, then all we're doing is just recycling those kinds of stories. So I was wanting to have an opportunity to get past that with Kanakanology, and I'm so thankful for you sharing your journey. And so where are you going to go from, you know, how is it at the university now that, so you graduated and you got your degree in what?
I graduated Hawaiian Studies and Political Science. Then
Wow.
I wandered for about a year and got into law school. So I went to Richardson Law School.
Mhm.
And at the law school, I learned the concept of legal guerrilla warfare.
Right.
Yeah, Williamson Chang, who was one of the professors there, um, kind of got me thinking about it. And it's not, so a lot of people, the law is going to answer all of the problems. And I never believed it. So he taught me that, it's okay not to believe it because the law is really just a tool to maintain oppression for the US government.
Right.
And
Mm.
it helps to,
Consistently.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so it helps keep order where there otherwise wouldn't be. And so if they pass something that says Hawaiians have access rights to undeveloped land, a lot of people say, hooray, Hawaiians got rights. And what I come to realize is that's just kind of like a table, something from the table, scrap that fell on the ground, and they're saying, okay, here you guys can have that. But ultimately, if you look at the cases, they're not about expanding rights. They're about saying how limited your access and rights are. And so the law is designed to keep us kind of uh, tethered to the U.S. system and the economy and all those things. So when I got out of law school, I was trying to figure out where I would go. I was supposed to actually take over after Halealoha left DLNR and go
Mm.
and be a part of the Chapter 6E EV
Mhm.
section. But that didn't work out because basically they didn't want a conscious Hawaiian in the position, I think. I don't know. Um, and then Trustee Machado got elected, and she told me, "Hey, come work for me." And I have to give a lot of aloha to Colette. Whatever the politics people think of her, she told me, "Come work for OHA." And I told her, "Hell no, I'm never gonna work for OHA. OHA is just the evil part of the evil empire." And at the time, my son was barely 1 years old. I just got out of law school. I didn't pass the first round of the bar, so I was kind of looking around like, oh crap, how am I gonna support my family? And I called her up maybe a month later and I said, hey, is that job still open? And she told me, oh yeah, I was waiting for you. Call me back. And I was like, how the hell
Oh.
I was gonna have? She goes, no, I just had a feeling. So, and I
Mm.
told her, but I still don't like OHA. And she said, that's okay. You come work for me, and if you don't like OHA, you can leave. And I said, and what she ended up letting me do is have my own voice. So when everybody was
Okay.
towing the line, I was over there sending emails behind the scenes going, watch out for this, watch out for that. And the trustees didn't like it. And Colette told me, so long as that's not part of your work, if you report stuff out as, and it's not attorney-client privilege, do whatever you like. Because you have to speak your
Oh,
own. Yeah, yeah.
mean. That's
So
really mean. That's she just gonna allow. She'll let him go
yeah,
and
she
let it.
did. She
Let you
did.
be the informant.
And every now and then, because she loved me so much, she'd go close the door behind you, and then we'd have a little scrap
Yeah.
about about different things. But at the end of the day, she told me, "I don't agree with you, but if that's your position, go for it." And I had to really respect her for that. She kept me on longer than she should have at OHA because I was spiraling out of control politically. So, and then was during one of those Ilio Ulo Kalani vigils at the Capitol where I bumped into Lili Kala. And I'm not going to go through the whole story, but I had conflicts with Hawaiian studies before the building was built and everything. So
Mm.
I didn't leave Hawaiian studies, even though, I loved the place and I got really awesome education from Hawaiian studies. I didn't leave on good terms. And Lili Kala approached me during the vigil, so like midnight or something, and told me, I'm mending bridges. I'll let you come back. We need our
Mm.
community stronger. And so, something that you don't expect and it happens when you're in the middle of prayer, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So that that's not on chance kind of thing.
yeah.
And she brought me on board just as a lecturer, just to get my feet wet. I fell in love with teaching. I never thought I would. And next thing I know, I'm working over there as a lecturer. And then when the job dried up, the money dried up, I went and worked at Kanakanology. So I found myself back in the space that saved me,
Right.
and actually being one of the directors there and getting myself more familiar with LOI systems and community, and then a job opened up, the one I have now, and I got it, and I look back at that and go, how the hell did that happen? Because my biggest claim to fame wasn't so much I was a litigator or anything. It was I did community service work and I did activism, and I was arrested twice. So that's kind of like I put on my resume, and my friends would go, "Oh, bro, you're not gonna get hired saying you was arrested twice." And I said, "Hey, social movement.
Mhm.
I earned those arrests,
Yeah.
and so those things got me into strange spaces, but also got me into good places. And I'll tell you folks, so being at the academy, not everybody appreciates activism and getting an arrest
Mhm.
record. And in fact, there are members of the community who actually frowned upon it and thought, yeah, where's your scholarship? You know, and I respect the scholarship part. Not to say I don't respect it, but for me, it wasn't about how many books I publish. It was about how many minds I can cultivate in a healthy way so that our Lahui is not just about publications, but our Lahui is about young people feeling like they have the ability to take all of the things that their families have taught them and speak that truth.
That's right. Yeah. Mhm.
Oh,
Mhm. Yeah.
so true. That really is it.
Mhm.
That's our greatest hope, right? Like
Mhm.
if we can do that, then that's all that it really will take, and the rest will fall right into line, I feel like.
I'm really hopeful, I'm
Mhm.
really looking forward to more of the students are the ones that keep me going, to tell you the truth. They're the ones who tell me, have you not heard of this issue yet? Or they'll remind me of things that I never knew that their kupuna had taught them or that they learned. And I humble myself to that, because that's how we take it to the next level. It's not really about me, really. I got an ego. Everybody in the academy has egos, but I mean, what saves us from our egos are the way that our students and colleagues are able to come up and give different versions of reality and love and life, and remind us that how important that is. And
Mhm.
I mean, I right now, the people who are saving me are people like my son, who's like 25, gonna be 26. And yeah, I know, unreal. Yeah.
Wow.
And these students who come through, who just have a desire to know something, and I have to remind them, you guys already know stuff. Nothing in this book you're reading is going to teach you what you already know. All it's going to do is help strengthen or enhance what you already know. It's going to make what you know stronger. And they're the ones who kind of keep me going. So when it comes to activism stuff, I I don't know if I'm as involved as I used to be. I did spend very cold month up on the Mauna,
Mhm.
and some other spaces, but it's these young people who are demonstrating a commitment, and other folks my age demonstrating commitments that I have to honor and be a better person for it. Especially where the kuleana I have as a kumu. And if
Mhm.
students are calling me kumu, I used to feel very uncomfortable. Like, okay, wait a minute, I'm no freaking kumu. Um, uh, but at some level, I have to accept that there is an expectation, and whether I like it or not, you know, um,
Mm.
I have to be better at it in order to live up to that expectation for our community, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you guys know Antipua guys, they're gonna teach you on chant. When we started to learn Hui Malamo stuff for Ivi Kupuna, I remember getting there late at night, um, being given like 5 pule and being told, okay, you're gonna learn this tonight because tomorrow, first thing in the morning, everybody gonna have to do them. Yeah, you sit there and go, what are you talking about? And I wish I drove myself to this place because now I'm stuck. You know, but you learn, right? You learn like um sometimes some things, you can choose, but some things just because of where you are and who you are and the space that you're in, they're chosen for you,
Mhm.
and instead of resisting, you fully embrace it. So I think for the future, I'm watching, I'm watching all these people, and what excites me the most is they're fully embracing it. They're not like
Yeah.
me. It didn't take them years to try and eh, they're just going, okay, I'm ready.
Hmm.
Because we're standing on your
Hungry.
shoulders.
Yeah.
No,
They're
really.
hungry. They're hungry.
Well, that the identity crisis that of and the kuleana, I feel like that struggle when you start to realize, and for me it was in college too, but on the other side, coming as an haole, and who am I and why am I here and what does that mean? Same kind of issues, but on the other side, and still a realization of kuleana, I think. But I think with that foundation that is laid before us of my generation, in my 30s, I think like, a lot of the questioning, the research that you had to do, why is it like that? But back it up. Well, now we know it already. It's been so well researched at this time that we can go even the next step where it's not such a deep dive, I feel like, because of the work of your guys' generation. You made us makakao to take it to the
Well,
next level.
yeah, mahalo. But you know what? And we had people like Soli and Kwaipuna and Haunani and all those
Right.
other folks I mentioned. I mean, they're the ones who set it up for us, right? So
Right.
Hmm.
so maybe that's just, we have to expect that kind of progression, and hopefully, it progresses faster
Hmm.
because we're over the other stuff, or at least we should be, as far as all the being American thing goes. Now we're like, okay, we know we're stuck in America right now because of the occupation, but that doesn't mean that we have to accept being American. That means
Correct.
we can be Hawaiian, and that means we can understand our relationship as citizens of the nation, and then start to behave that way, start to accept the relationships better. Um, it's my cut.
Yeah.
Well, I talk
I
a lot,
think for
yeah.
me, for what I've done for my life and stuff has just been having the younger generation understand, or have them, kind of like build their ahu, so to speak, on the sense that we have validity, just like the Inuits, just like the Sioux, just like the Germans, the French, whoever, wherever they come from. Hawaiians, the Kanaka, have validity on our aina. We are valid in our aina, and we have to stand on that. That's our ahu. We cannot, we have to come to the point of not questioning that. We do have the answers to a lot of questions that are out there. We do have the disciplines, I mean, like you said, like learning on 5 chants overnight, whatever, it's a discipline. Being Hawaiian is a discipline in itself. Studying the stars, canoe, everything, there was discipline. We had this whole
Yeah.
system in place, and let's not forget about that. And why? Because we are valid as being Kanaka. We're not nobody else. We're Kanaka, and we have to stand on that ahu.
Can I
As
tell you guys a fear that I have?
Right.
Because there's a lot of
Oh yeah,
there's a
go
lot of
ahead.
good things I look forward to, but I what I fear sometimes
Mm-hmm.
is complacency,
Mhm.
because maybe when I was going to school, didn't have a lot of Hawaiians, didn't have a lot of Hawaiian professors, You know, when I was in a community, I mean, it was just different. So you felt like you had to fight all the time. Fight,
Right.
fight, fight, fight. Everything you did, you know, living in Mililani, had to fight just to freaking live in Mililani.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I think because of the way, is it Leah or Leah?
Leah.
Leah, sorry.
Hi.
What Leah was saying earlier is important. But what I worry about is because of such a positive movement forward that's happening, people get comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You get really, you know, and at the university, you get really comfortable, right? Because you get tenure, so there's the job security thing, and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And when we get comfortable, then sometimes we don't pay attention at what's going on around us, and that's dangerous to me because it could slip us back a couple generations if we're not paying attention. And at the University of Manoa, they got this thing called the Aloha Aina strategic plan. And so the strategic plan is saying that the university commits to being Aloha Aina, and they commit to the kuleana of Aloha Aina. But then when you ask the administration, okay, what does that mean? Like, oh, we love the land. And it's like, yeah, but what does it mean when you say Aloha Aina? What about the political, the
The
social, everything?
patriotism. That's
It's
patriotism.
spiritual.
Not, yeah, it
Yeah.
literally is love of land, but what it is patriotism and um
It's the
loyalist.
air.
It's a
It's the
loyalist
air.
party.
No, it's the
Right.
air. It's the air of the
Yeah.
land. Mm-hmm.
And so we tell them, okay, so what
I
about
get it.
TMT
Yeah.
then? So you guys going because you want Aloha Aina University now, you guys could pull back on the TMT and restore the Hawaiians to be in control of the Mauna. And like, oh, well, you know, it's not just about TMT. We recognize there's Hawaiians concerned. And it's like, okay, so you don't know what Aloha Aina is. You don't understand it.
Right.
And you know,
Mhm.
and we there's a handful of us who've been saying, get rid of the phrase, take it out of your strategic plan because number one, you don't know what it means. And number two, who do you think that you can own something like that as yours? Who gave you the kuleana in the first place? Nobody gave you that kuleana. You can't just claim it. And but I will say there are some comfortable people in the university who have kind of blessed it, you know. And
Mm.
that's
Hey,
that's
good
that's
subject
it's
we can talk about it another time.
you
I
know
mean it.
so
I mean it.
that's
I mean that is really something that that's true because to me I would think that that would be something of a normal pattern in strategic planning. For example, you have this time where everything kind of levels off. Everybody does their compromise, everybody does their thing and everything like that. But when it comes to our kind of things, talking about our excitement and our activism, whatever, we have to be very, very careful that timing is shortened and or we know that it's happening versus just letting it go on the wayside and not pay attention to it. Now that's a whole totally different strategic thing in itself. But I would love to bring that up in another discussion.
absolutely, but the discipline is the key, right?
Correct. It is.
um
It's a discipline.
it's not easy. It's not easy. I think Polycup was on a video one time saying it's not easy being one conscious, confident Hawaiian, right? To be a Hawaiian, you have to really be fully involved in the moment, and you cannot let your guard down. To be a patriot,
Mhm.
you have to be fully involved in the moment. You cannot let your guard down. Um, and that discipline we got to work at. I mean, I'm not that
Mhm.
disciplined. I already told you my
Mhm.
story. I was kolohe half the time. Although maybe I can argue that I'm disciplined in kolohe.
Yeah. Everything in moderation, even
Yeah, yeah.
moderation.
Yeah.
Sometimes you gotta go for broke. But yeah.
Oh,
So
but
what is
thank you
your
so
hope?
much. Oh, go
What is
ahead.
your hope for the future beyond that? Like, what would you like your legacy to be when you look at this whole story of your life and the path that you have gone and where it has taken you? What is your hope for your future and your legacy?
This might sound hokey, but love. I want to be a part of something that perpetuates the love that my grandparents gave me to,
Mm.
and that my parents gave me, no matter how hard it was, no matter how much sacrifice. I want everyone else to be able to to um to live that, and to, because it's probably one of the hardest things to do in this freaking world today. And I'm not talking about I love you, aloha spirit kind stuff, right? I'm talking, about genuine aloha for our aina, for who we are as a people, for our nation. And I don't know about legacy. I When I look at my son, I want him to be somebody who can bring people together with love, not with fear, not with anger, although those things will happen, but work in his community, work with the people online, standing, holding signs on the front line, you know, um,
Mhm.
and recognizing that our basic humanity is love. The future of our basic humanity is love.
Mhm.
And for Hawaii, that means love of the nation. That means love of that means aloha aina, right? That means the concepts that make us who we are as part of this aina.
Mhm.
Um, and so I don't know if I'm really answering your question.
No,
It's
you
a hard
are.
one
I
for me.
really, I really understand what you're saying. And, it's very profound. And I know that's something I'll be sitting with for a while. Mahalo, the aloha in the aloha aina. And really, what is that?
Mhm.
Really? And I hear what you're saying. It's not the kind, aloha kind, but like that true, deep in love and that. Oh, mahalo. I'm going to be sitting with that one for a while.
Well, it's a struggle, right? We gotta struggle. I mean,
It's
to
there,
love.
but that as a fuel, as a philosophy of the fuel versus because it's very easy to go to the outrage, to the indignation. Um, but all of those, even with all of those layers, the seed is the aloha. If without the aloha, there's no more outrage and the indignation, right?
Mhm.
Wow. Oh, mahalo. Let me stop to think about with that.
Anything
Oh,
else you want to say?
share with
I
us.
don't know. I
Michelle?
said plenty. Any other
Yeah,
question?
plenty.
We did
I
good
will.
job.
I will say this. I really appreciate the call and your
Mm,
patience, because I was supposed to be on a little while ago and then I kind of messed that up. So I appreciate you folks
yes.
hanging in there. And um, Leah, I think this is the first time I got to actually meet you.
I,
Um,
I,
so I'm really happy to have spent the time with you and meet you. And Kaui, I
Mhm.
hope we can spend more time together. I gotta get out there to Hawaii Island.
Yeah, if you
Um,
come, call me up.
I, Komai, and
Yeah.
really, it is an honor, and we're so
So
grateful
much.
for you, to you for coming on the show and sharing.
Mhm.
And this is really what we were hoping to do with this platform, with Kanakanology, to really to make it our people that we all look up to, the first time we meet, by know of you, and of your work and stuff, and to make it, more real and tangible. We're all in this together, and it's not always some superhero kind of situation, everybody has their story and their journey. So mahalo nui for sharing yours.
Mhm.
Thank you. Um, there's something, I know we gotta sign off soon, but I just wanted to say,
Yes.
there's something. It's gonna sound very haipule-ish, but there we're all cracked vessels, right? Meaning that nobody is perfect. And this makes me feel, when we're talking like this, it makes me appreciate the conversation, because um, if we walked around forcing ourselves to be perfect, we lose out on the relationships that we can have.
Mhm.
We put away our pretensions, and we recognize that the imperfection is actually where all of the value is.
Mhm.
It's all of the little things, the quirks and all those things that make our communities strong. And And thank you guys for having this. This is a cool platform. Mahalo.
Awesome.
Mahalo yaoi.
Yeah, we're very grateful. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.